To all who wander through the shadows, thank you. Spectral Dream has reached 100 subscribers, and I'm honestly humbled. What began as a quiet place to share dark tales and eerie whispers has turned into a growing circle of brave listeners like you. Whether you're here for a quick chill or to dive deep into the unknown, your support means everything. More stories are coming, darker, stranger, more unsettling, and a huge thanks for being part of the growing Spectral Dream community. Title: The Girl on the Stairs. This might be a long story, and you don't have to believe it. Just hear me out, maybe for fun, or maybe for a little chill down your spine. I used to be pretty sensitive to the unseen. I didn't always see them clearly, but usually I'd catch a glimpse when I was half asleep, or in that strange state between dreaming and waking. And sometimes, if I was fully awake, I'd see something just for a split second. There's one memory that still creeps me out. One night, I saw a Kunti La Nuk. For those who don't know, a Kunti La Nuk is a female ghost in Indonesian folklore. Picture something like Sadako from The Ring, but with messier, wilder hair and a larger, more terrifying presence. You can look her up if you're curious, but don't do it before bed. I saw her on the stairs, but she wasn't standing like a normal person. Her body was upside down, crawling upward. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want the rest of the house to panic or get paranoid. But about an hour later, around 4 a.m., just before the call to morning prayer, my younger sibling ran into the room screaming. They had seen her too. That's when I realized it wasn't just me. We still didn't understand why she appeared. That is, until a family friend visited. He was someone special, kind of like an indigo child, someone who could see things beyond this world. He said that the spirit had been living in the area long before our house was ever built. She hadn't meant to show herself to us. It was accidental. Maybe our frequencies just happened to match hers at that moment. That's why both my sibling and I saw her that night. Thankfully, she wasn't the kind that liked to cause harm. But still, the memory sends shivers down my spine. When I was younger, I used to see Kunti La Nuk more often, especially when I was sick. One would appear looking like my mom. During long road trips, if we passed by forests, I'd sometimes see her clinging to the back window of the car. Other times I'd see her combing her hair in front of the mirror, but there would be no reflection. They always seemed to be crying. There's a belief that if you hear their crying nearby, it actually means they're far away. But if it sounds distant, they're close. I've heard that cry a few times. It always sounded far away, but I knew better. It meant she was near. I wasn't alone either. My older siblings heard it too. We were so scared, we stayed awake the whole night and didn't dare leave the room. It didn't stop there. When I was really little, I used to hear her call my name, always 3 times. I'd cry uncontrollably after 6 p.m., but there would be no tears. My mom told me I would beg to go to my grandma's house, just so I could climb her mango tree. When they asked me why, I'd say, I want to meet the girl. I don't remember saying that, but I do remember the feeling. I remember being desperate to go. I'd get angry when they wouldn't let me. I didn't know who the girl was back then. But now, I wonder, maybe it was her. Maybe it was always her. I'm thankful that I don't see them anymore, truly. But even now, just talking about this makes my room feel different, a little heavier, a little colder. They say if you talk about them too much, they might come back. Let's hope not. Title: The Night the Bell Rang. My Father's Paranormal Encounters in Indonesia. Let me tell you a couple of chilling stories my dad told me. These happened while he was working in Indonesia. He swears they're true, and he's not the kind of person who makes up stories. My family is very religious, my dad especially. He's not a preacher, but he lives his life closely with God. He prays every day, believes deeply in his faith, and isn't afraid of ghosts or spirits. He owns a company that imports live freshwater fish from Indonesia. His workplace, which he calls his fish farm, is basically a small house filled with fish tanks. The house is surrounded by trees on all sides. Even during the day, the place feels creepy. Over the years, people have seen strange things there. My dad says that after years of praying, he was given the ability to sense spirits. He can't exactly see them, but he can feel them. Here's the first story. Story 1. The Midnight Bell. It was almost midnight. My dad was working late at the fish farm with one of his employees. Just the two of them were there, packing fish for export. Suddenly, the bell at the front door rang. It was strange. Who would show up at that time of night? My dad told his employee to check, but when he opened the door, no one was there. They went back to work. A few minutes later, the bell rang again. This time, my dad checked. Still, no one. They tried to ignore it and continued working. Then, the bell rang again. That's when my dad remembered something. Earlier that day, one of his workers had unplugged the bell for repairs. It wasn't even working. He stepped outside and called into the night. He said, "Please stop disturbing us. We're trying to work." His employee started praying quietly, clearly nervous. They went back inside and continued packing. For a moment, it was quiet. Then, the bell rang again. This time, my dad had had enough. He stepped out and shouted in Indonesian something like, "Leave us alone, I'm trying to work." Right then, his employee gasped. He said he saw a black shadow the size of a man fly into the trees. The bell never rang again that night. Now for the second story. Story 2. The Passenger in the Rear View. One night, my dad was heading home after work. As he walked to his car, he felt a heavy presence, like something was following him. He got in the car and hoped the feeling would go away. But when he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw her. A woman with long black hair, wearing a white dress. Her skin was pale, her eyes were completely black, and she was grinning at him. He knew what she was. In Indonesia, people call her a kuntilanak. She's a kind of female demon. Even with her sitting in the back seat, my dad didn't panic. He kept driving calmly. When he got home, he felt that she had followed him across the yard. He turned to the trees and spoke to her, calmly and with authority. He said, "You followed me home, and I didn't say anything. But if you touch my family, I will destroy you. Leave, in the name of Jesus." She hissed at him and vanished right before his eyes. That's it. Those are the two stories my dad told me. He often reminds us of this verse from the Bible. 1 John chapter 4, verse 4. "But you belong to God, my dear children. You have already won a victory, because the Spirit who lives in you is greater than the spirit who lives in the world." Sometimes, when the night is quiet and the trees sway just a little too much, I remember these stories, and I wonder just how many spirits are still out there. Title: The Witch That Landed on Our Roof. Let me tell you about the time I came face to face with something not quite human. It happened a few years ago, when my family and I took a trip to Lombok, Indonesia, my dad's homeland. I've lived in Australia my whole life, so visiting the village where my dad grew up felt like stepping into another world. We were staying with relatives, all packed into a small room behind my uncle's deli. The ceiling was made of thin, corrugated iron, and there was only one tiny window, just a square hole with iron bars across it, like something you'd see in a jail. A little curtain hung over it, barely covering the opening. One night, while all 5 of us were asleep, my mom, dad, sister, and me, we were jolted awake by the loudest bang you can imagine. It came from the roof. A moment later, we heard scratching, heavy, dragging, scraping sounds. Not the kind of noise a cat or bird could make. There weren't even any trees nearby for an animal to fall from. My mom, who's never believed in anything paranormal, looked worried. Even she admitted it didn't sound natural. My dad, though, barely reacted. Growing up in Indonesia, he'd seen and heard things like this before. The next morning, my dad told his siblings about it. They just nodded, like it was normal. One of them said, "Yeah, the leaks have been running around at night again." Leeks, pronounced leok, are witches created by black magic. They look like people during the day, but at night they grow wings like crows and fly across rooftops, screaming and howling in the dark. It sounds insane, I know, but the locals believe it, and after that night, I wasn't so sure it was just folklore anymore. Here's where it gets even creepier. Right next to my uncle's deli is a village with its own old traditions and beliefs. My other uncle married a woman from there, so we were pretty close to the people. In that village, there's a shaman couple. They call them dukun. The wife is a tiny old lady with reddish-black teeth from chewing betel nuts all day. The husband, I barely remember. My dad once took us to visit them. The dukun wanted to perform a small cleansing ritual for our family. Just something simple, nothing too serious. But during the visit, the dukun told my dad that they believed a few leaks were active in the area. They suspected a woman and her mother who lived right next door to us. Yes, right where that tiny window in our room faced. They didn't want to accuse them directly, that's dangerous business in a small village, so they just told us to be careful and let it be. That night, I had the worst sleep of my life. I was sweating, itchy, and covered in heat rash. Something felt off. And every time my dad closed the curtain on that little window, he'd wake up later and see it open again. He said he had a strange feeling, like someone was watching from the other side. Whether or not you believe in things like this, the feeling that night was real. The noise was real. The fear was real. I'll never forget the sound of whatever it was that landed on our roof. Leeks, or layak, are said to be regular people who turn into supernatural beings through black magic. They exist in many parts of Indonesia, with different names and forms depending on the region. But in Bali and Lombok, they're called leeks. You can read about them yourself if you're curious. I've heard so many stories from my dad. Ghosts, curses, spirits, but this one I lived through myself. And let me tell you, it still gives me chills. Hello everyone, Spectral Dream here. I just wanted to thank everyone who's been supporting my small channel. If you or anyone you know has a story you'd like me to narrate, please feel free to comment down in the comment section and I'll see what I can do. I look forward to telling everyone spooky stories. And if you're new here, please have a seat and come along with us on this journey.